I know it's not an F50, but I think it's fair to argue that the X18.1 is one of the best speed boots Adidas ever made. Released in 2018, the X18.1 was the laced alternative to the more expensive and lace-less X18 Plus, which featured a more raw, plasticky skeletal weave upper, whereas the .1 model featured a mesh-based synthetic appropriately called speed mesh. A material that from a tech perspective was pretty much as simple as it got. It was a thin mesh base layer as the core of the material with a top layer of polyurethane so it wasn't overly slippery, as well as to add just a little bit of structure, and the inside of the boot was lined in a super soft microfiber, the end result being something that felt soft, flexible, and surprisingly sock-like despite not being a true prime knit upper like we had seen from Adidas in years past. The lacing system was pushed slightly to the medial side, which was a little bit unusual for a pair of speed boots, but ultimately offered really good lockdown and in general a much more secure and responsive feel when compared to the laceless X18 Plus. It introduced a heel construction and design that more or less still exists on the current generation of F50s, and it also featured a speed frame sole plate and stud pattern that was more or less recycled from the F50 Adizero era. Long story short, they look the part, were incredibly lightweight, the performance was definitely there, and I think most importantly, the simplicity of this design is what made them feel so comfortable, which is a super underrated characteristic when it comes to speed boots. By modern day standards, you might argue that the design was a little bit too simple and, dare I say, low tech, but that ultimately is what made the X18.1 such an amazing pair of football boots.